All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the late edition of Post Match Not Really Live with We Ain't Got No History. My name is David, and this will probably be a little briefer than normal considering it is pretty late. In this part of the world, it's been about 14 hours, 12, 13 hours since Chelsea crashed out of the League Cup at the semi-final stage with yet another loss to Arsenal. This is unfortunately becoming a rather annoying habit for Conte's Chelsea, who now has one win in 8 tries against the Gunners, not counting the preseason friendly, which of course we won 3-0, but nobody really cares because it's just a preseason friendly. So this latest one was a 2-1 loss at the Emirates. Eden Hazard scoring in the 7th minute. Antonio Rudiger, who had one of his perhaps a day that he will be remembering for all the wrong reasons, getting credited with an own goal in 12th minute, and then Granit Xhaka scoring the winner for Arsenal in the 60th minute on the hour mark. Morning, everybody, or whatever time it might be in your time zone. It is a bright and early or a very late 3 a.m. in this part of the world, so we're doing all right for 3 a.m. Tough loss, sad loss as the first two. I appreciate the fact that our first two comments are tough loss and sad loss instead of, and the third one for unlucky is definitely unlucky in my opinion. Nice to see those opinions instead of the usual sensationalist, knee-jerking, ultra negative, all this usual Twitter reaction that followed yesterday's result. Why the late post? I just kind of ran out of time. This is almost I don't know, just one of those the day kind of flew by after a loss. We all deal with losses differently. I suppose there are many who jump online and like to complain a lot. Some of us just kind of try to deal with it in a bit more what I would think sensible, a more reflective way, whatever. One of those where I try to do things that are not necessarily Chelsea related. Is one of the ways I tend to deal with sad, disappointing results. I don't know. It's just one of those time ran away, and then of course Conte had a fairly interesting post-match press conference as well, or at least his quotes are being played up as fairly interesting. I'm not sure it really is. He didn't really say anything new. What people are picking up on is him kind of complaining again, supposedly complaining or just, talking about the state of the squad. And, he keeps saying that he doesn't have any influence on Chelsea's transfer decisions, which in a way is true because he doesn't make transfer decisions. We know that, but he does have some input, obviously. And, I think we can safely assume that Chelsea would not be going after players like Edin Dzeko or Andy Carroll or whoever else, random big tall man we've been linked with in January. That definitely sounds like a Conte signing if he do sign somebody like that, since he can't really bring himself to trust Batshuayi, for example, or, Michi's not working out or whatever. That's not to say, like some of the comments are saying, that Conte is the problem for the team. I think it's really easy to forget that we are where we are because of Conte. 2 years ago, we finished whatever it was 10th, and while Conte will obviously play up his own accomplishments of last season, I think it's fairly undeniable that without him, we most likely don't win the title. You can blame him possibly for not being quite as tactically flexible this season as last. But just last season's, that one shift, incidentally after an Arsenal loss, when he shifted the team to a 3-4-3, caught the whole league by surprise. It ushered in a new era basically for the Premier League of a lot of teams now using three-man defenses. 6 months later or whatever, 7 months later, are we really saying now Conte is the problem when 7 months ago, he was the savior? I mean, I'm all about, what have you done for me lately, and have we, oh my God, we're third in the league, this is terrible. But like, at some point we gotta have some perspective about this whole situation. That's not to say that Conte himself is not short-termist, and that's always is in the background when a lot of these stories and narratives start up again. I thought there was a really good, Twitter is a bit of a cesspool these days, but there was one person who made a really good comment, replied to somebody else's article. It doesn't even really matter who it was, but it kind of speaks to this apparent confusion that we're having with our transfer strategies, with possible insecurity as to like what's going to happen after the summer. Half the people are saying Conte's leaving, half the people are saying Conte's getting sacked, half the people are saying, I realize this is more than two, we're at like three halves now, which is impossible, but it's nobody really knows, and some people are saying Conte is for sure he's leaving on his own accord. Some people are saying the club's going to fire him. It just seems so at odds. One decision with the next. If Chelsea are supposedly expecting Conte to leave in the summer, then why are we even bothering to sign somebody like Dzeko or somebody like Andy Carroll? Why even entertain this nonsense? But if we are in fact signing this guy or looking at signing players like that to appease Conte, then why is he talking about not having any influence on transfers and all this nonsense? So it's just there's a lot of this confusion, and at some point you don't even really know who to believe, what to believe. We always, at least I've always thought of Conte as a bit of a straight shooter. Part of that obviously was his limited English knowledge, which kind of restricted him to 4 or 5 different sentences every time he was asked a question. His English is improving. Perhaps we were better off when it wasn't so complete, where he could express more complex thoughts. But it is what it is. It's one of those situations, again, as always is in professional sports, is where if we were winning, none of this would be a problem. Although, there were plenty of stories last year of Conte leaving in the summer too, so, it's just one of those things that happens with Chelsea. We have a reputation for sacking managers all the time, even if we aren't necessarily the worst these days. But and Conte himself has a reputation for being a short-termist, for complaining about the club or boards not backing him. He did that at Juventus. He did that at Bari or whatever, where he resigned after getting them promoted. It is one of those situations. Yes, and then there's of course the narrative as well, or not narrative, but the perspective that Conte just got lucky last season, where the 3-4-3 was something that he knew and nobody else did, and thus caught the people by surprise. We won on a 13-game winning streak, and that was that. And that certainly is also a valid interpretation. As we saw yesterday, luck sometimes plays a pretty significant role in winning sports, winning football. I don't know if we can blame, just more specifically yesterday, we can blame whatever we want, but there's little denying that both Arsenal goals had massive strokes of luck for them. The first one being, sure, it's a slightly open header for Monreal, but it is Monreal with about 15 yards from goal and not much danger of him scoring from there. He gets his header. The header hits Alonso in the head, bounces to Rudiger's head. He's not even looking at the ball at that point, and it just kind of goes into the goal. So that's Arsenal's first goal. Second one, it was pretty good defense overall. No real complaints about that. Two people actually closed down the winger for Arsenal. I even forget who it was. And he crossed it in anyway. It deflects off of Rudiger's heel. Poor old Tony Rudiger. It was a rough day for him. Deflects off his heel right into the path of Xhaka, who's not even an advanced midfielder. He was just there because of a set piece or whatever. And that was it. And there you go. Conte should be sacked down, says Isaac. God, I hope not. It's, I don't know. That seems like it would be a pretty silly thing to do. But hey, maybe it is. So, who knows these days, right? But, it's just one of those. So, like, those two bounces go against you, and suddenly you kind of forget that Chelsea dominated certainly the first half of this game. You can say the second half was even, but Chelsea were well on top in the first half, and we only had the one goal to show for it. Things sometimes results are based on a couple strokes of luck. Please read my comment above. Oh, sorry. I think is this one. I think Conte is really committed to the team, but we're not giving it our all. Maybe Chelsea's all about luck recently, and we have to go back to Barcelona luck. Both were luck. Yeah, it's. And I think most people are not satisfied with explanations of luck, and so we start looking for patterns. We start looking for people to blame, and certainly there are ways we can improve. In the post-match, Conte was talking about how when Willian got hurt, which I think was basically the turning point of the game. It didn't really seem like it at the time because Chelsea were well on. It was 1-1 at the time, but Chelsea had the better of the play, and we looked threatening. But when Willian got hurt, it really kind of destroyed our plan A, our game plan. And so Conte was complaining about having only Ross Barkley on the bench to replace Willian, who's in a like-for-like substitution to keep the shape and keep the strategy. And of course, you can look at that as saying, why don't I have access to better players? Please, board, sign me some better players. Or of course, you can look at it in saying that it is Conte who picked the bench. He picked literally one attacking player that he kind of sort of might trust. He picked Batshuayi because we literally have no other center forward because Morata is injured. That's a whole another story there. But, so obviously when Willian goes down, Conte gave himself two options. He could either put on Barkley, who was clearly not yet fit, or he could put on Batshuayi, whom he doesn't trust. Many people pointed out that Charlie Musonda was not on the bench. But of course, would Conte trust Charlie Musonda in this situation? And we can't really say that he would. Point being, when Conte complains about not having options to replace Willian with anybody else other than Barkley, he means I can't trust any other options that I have that I could replace Willian with. And not that long ago, Willian wasn't as much of a key player either, as he suddenly has played himself into being. As awkward as that sentence is. So yeah, so it's just one of those where I think a lot of, especially yesterday, I think a lot of Conte's comments were born of frustration. I am sure as much as we are frustrated with Chelsea being unable to beat Arsenal these days, I'm sure it grates at Conte even more, especially since he still has yet to win a knockout competition as a manager, which is kind of odd, but it also kind of speaks to his management style in a way, which goes for consistency and predictable patterns of play, which are both good and bad. If the opposition can figure it out, it's not so good for you, but it also leaves the team with reliable options that we can use in certain situations. But a lot of that is geared more towards a 38 game season, which is a bit of a grind. So you have to be able to grind out results every once in a while. Knockout competitions, especially on League Cup, is this semifinal is double elimination, but the game by itself after the 0-0 first leg was basically a single elimination game. It's one of those where freak results, like 2 deflected goals for Arsenal, can decide the entire match, and it doesn't really matter if you're playing the statistical, you're playing the safe choices that usually get you a win. Say whatever strategy you're using gets you a win 80% of the time. In a knockout competition, the 20% of the time is going to hurt you a lot more than in a league situation. So a lot of that could explain why Conte is still looking for his first knockout trophy. Yeah, I don't know. Of course, it could just be luck. As it doesn't have to do anything with management style. When we won the Champions League in 2012, I don't think anybody's going to tell you that was the best Chelsea team of the last 20 years. But that's the Chelsea team that actually ended up winning the biggest trophy in club football. So, it's in knockout competitions, strange things can happen, like 2-2 at the Nou Camp. That happens maybe once out of every 100 tries in that situation, and we just happened to get lucky. Everything that kind of fell our way after Terry got sent off. So it's just things happen. Weird things happen in knockout competitions, and that's kind of that's a weird thing that happened yesterday. Zidane should be available soon. Yeah, congrats to Zinedine Zidane, who made Real Madrid history by getting knocked out at home by somebody called Leganés. So he might just win the sack race with Conte. That was a bit of a joke at the start of the season to see who's going to get sacked first out of the 2 of the 3 nominees for FIFA Coach of the Year for last season. It was Zidane, Conte, and Allegri. Allegri's job seems to be safe at Juventus, but it was the joke as to who's gonna get sacked first, and Zidane seems to be well in the lead. They're not. I don't think they're even top 3 at the moment in Spain. This game's set for a thrashing after Hazard's goal. Everything went down after Willian's injury. Indeed, it did. Indeed. I mean, Chelsea started very well. Pedro scored inside of 5 minutes, but was ruled out for offside. It was a good call, so that was fine. Hazard scored 2 minutes later, and it looked like we were going to run away with it. Then we did that thing where we kind of let the other team play for a minute. So Arsenal literally had the ball for about 3 minutes and got the lucky pinball goal off the double-headed deflection. I don't even know what to call it. Rudiger's own goal. And then we resumed previous service where Chelsea had, almost all of the ball. I think at some point somebody was saying Arsenal had 38% possession, which is, possessions, whatever, but for Arsenal to have 38% possession at home, this is the team that's built around possession, that used to always talks about possession, the beautiful football, all this nonsense. Yeah. That's fairly impressive, and Chelsea did a very similar thing when we played here in the league in the game that finished 2-2. It's Conte's often accused of being a counter-attacking, reactive manager, especially by a certain Jose Mourinho last season. But we've done placed a great emphasis on possession and playing on the front foot this season, for better or worse. Part of that has seen us switch to the 3-5-2, which wasn't an issue yesterday. But yeah, I don't know. That's my issue with people who kind of say Conte is not flexible, because he seems to be constantly trying a few different things. He's not making a massive shift like last season, so it's not obvious. It's not like we're going back to a four back or a flat four or whatever. We're definitely sticking with this 3-man defensive setup, but there are many different variations you can try inside of that framework. So I think he's constantly looking for solutions while balancing the fact that we continue to play every 3-4 days. There's a game coming up on Sunday against Newcastle. For somebody who's looking for the kickoff, I believe it is 1:30 local time. 1:30 p.m. local time, Sunday against Newcastle, which is 8:30 a.m. Eastern, 5:30 a.m. Pacific, etc. Yeah, another early kick for those of us here on the Best Coast. Conte should stand up. Enough is enough with the disappointment here and there. He should know better. Does it mean we're not winning anything this season? The board have also disappointed us by not buying the team quality players, but rather adding quantity to the club. Shameless board of directors, says Emmanuel. Yeah, you could say that, although that's what Conte was asking for, right? Supposedly our main goal last summer was to build depth to the squad, because last season we used about 13 players, maybe 14 on a regular basis, and that was for one competition, and we won it, and that's cool. But this season now we added Champions League, and we wanted to do well in the cups as well, so we needed the depth. And when Conte was talking about this not too long ago, he kind of said we have 16 or 17 players. So in a way, that's kind of what we were looking for. Now you could say that signing people like Drinkwater or Zappacosta or Barkley, is not the hallmark of consistent winning teams. You should be spending your money on the best of the best rather than building with. So if you have 100 million to spend, for example, you should buy 100 million player instead of 33 million players. And that's certainly a valid criticism of Chelsea. We have lots of players who seem to have cost a fair amount of money and don't necessarily make the impact that one would expect from the money spent. And not even talking about Barkley, because Barkley was only 15 million, and we don't really know what he's capable of yet since he's still injured or not fit. But somebody like Drinkwater, hasn't really done anything all season other than be injured. He's played, but I can't really remember much of an impact that he ever made. Jury's obviously still out on Bakayoko, who's looked better recently, mostly because I think we've played him in a midfield 2 more than a midfield 3. A nice deep pool of poo, says Joseph. Yeah, that's a nice image for you. A nice deep pool of poo. Oh, Drinkwater. On the other hand, I don't know. It's a few years ago, I remember Spurs sold Gareth Bale, right, to Real Madrid, and they got whatever it was, 90 million, 100 million, and at the time, that was the world record. And so Spurs made up for Bale's loss by spending that 100 million on like 5 different players. And not unsurprisingly, they could not replicate the same results for a while until a lot of those players grew into their potential. And not all of them, but some of them. So I think that's kind of where Chelsea are hoping our investments will lead as well. So spending, what was it, 20, it's going to be 20, 25 million on this Emerson character, who's supposedly coming in sometime today or this week from Roma, left back. He's 23, coming off of an ACL tear. He's probably not somebody that we expect right away to start for Alonso, but at 23 and with decent amount of promise, both from his time in Brazil and his last season at Roma, we could definitely see him growing into maybe the next Azpilicueta. Azpilicueta was 8 million. Nobody expected him to be a world beater at that time. Now he is. 23 million is probably the new 8 million, given how transfer fees are these days. Somebody like Barkley certainly is. There's definitely a financial motivation as to why that deal was made. If he lives up to anywhere near his potential, he's not going to be a 15 million player. He's going to be a 50 million player, which is what Everton were asking initially, like 7 months ago. So it's if we're not at the top of the financial food chain, which we aren't, that's the kind of the sort of the signings you have to make. Now, obviously, this isn't the worst situation to find yourself in. We could be any of the many teams, not, Chelsea are third, so by definition, there are 80 plus teams below us in the Football League who would probably kill to be in our position. But, the perspective and the expectations are all different. So, yeah. The Moneyball system. Yeah, the Moneyball system. Moneyball. You're looking for market inefficiencies. You're looking for a place that you can exploit. I don't know. It's the days of free spending Chelsea are long gone, and this isn't new. This isn't anything that was heralded in by Conte's arrival or the last 6 months. We've been striving for this for some time, and I think we're finally getting to that point. But unfortunately, that also means that it's not as easy. Not as obvious what players you have to buy. If you're Manchester United, you say, I want Paul Pogba, and you buy Paul Pogba. I say, I want Alexis Sanchez, and you buy Alexis Sanchez. If you're Manchester City and your manager, who we should recall really didn't do that well last season, when he says, I want to buy all the wingbacks that are on the market, and I don't really care how much they cost, then City says, okay, we'll buy you all the wingbacks you want. So we buy you Walker and Danilo and Mendy and whoever else they wanted. Now apparently they're buying Laporte, Aymeric Laporte. They're paying his 60 million buyout clause. I mean, that's nice. Good for them. It'd be cool if Chelsea paid a 60 million buyout clause for Laporte. But instead, we spent 20 million on Rudiger, and we kind of hope that Rudiger will turn into a similar quality player as Laporte, and that's the deals. Those are the strategies we have to make. And it's a bit ironic that to go hand in hand with such a strategy, we actually need a coach like Conte. You need an actual coach to improve your players. Guardiola obviously is another one he's going to work with you on the training ground, put you in the exact location he wants you to be, make you a better player. You don't need a coach like Ancelotti or Mourinho even, who kind of just say are more of a man manager, more of a motivator, and just kind of leave you to your you know what to do. Go out there. Here's your lineup. Go out there and win us some games. You need an actual coach like Conte to improve players like Rudiger, Bakayoko, Emerson if he's truly coming in. even players like Musonda or Barkley. The trouble being, the ironic part being that Conte himself doesn't necessarily seem to trust those players as readily as some of the others. That said, we can look at Christensen, and he certainly has zero problems playing Christensen, who is one of the youngest players in the squad and has basically fully replaced the player that Conte spent a fair amount of time last season talking up as the best defender in the world. Whether that's a personal thing, whether Christensen got lucky, maybe if Chelsea did buy Laporte last summer, then Christensen would be nowhere near the first team. You never know. In hindsight, you can speculate all you want, etc., etc. Sorry, I have not. I've not been reading the comments. Dzeko. So Edin Dzeko is possibly heading to Chelsea, possibly not. I did enjoy the story on Tuesday that somebody snapped him putting luggage into the trunk, the boot of the car if you're in the UK. And then suddenly, so there was, the big story, Dzeko heading to the airport, flying to London. And then it turns out that A, he can't actually fly to London because he doesn't have a visa. And B, it turns out the luggage, the suitcases belong to his sister who was visiting him. And he was just taking her back to the airport. Of course, that could be a cover story. Maybe he jumped on the plane too. He packed himself into one of the bags. And off he flew to London to talk shop with Chelsea. And then he flew back and played for Roma against Sampdoria and scored their equalizing goal in the 91st minute. He could have used that. That could have been nice yesterday, but it didn't happen. There was no equalizing goal for Chelsea in the 91st minute. Why aren't we dropping Bakayoko? He's been mediocre at best in the last game. I'd actually disagree. I think Bakayoko has probably had his best stretch as a Chelsea player. Now, that might still mean he's mediocre, but he's actually played pretty well. And as mentioned earlier, I think that is no coincidence that that's been since we've switched back to a 3-4-3 look more frequently than a 3-5-2. Bakayoko seems lost in a three-man midfield. Doesn't quite know what to do. There was forget who was talking about this, but Bakayoko is very good behind the ball, sort of as a midfield destroyer. He's not so good ahead of the ball, which somebody like Fabregas is good at. As a creative player, somebody like Barkley theoretically is good at. So Conte and Bakayoko I think work very well as a solid midfield two in a 3-4-3, which makes Bakayoko kind of like the Matic equivalent from last season. There's obviously plenty of room for improvement for Bakayoko, especially on the possession attacking side of the ball. But I think he's done actually pretty well, and there could certainly be a case made that he was our best player last night overall, and had one of the best passes in the game too for Hazard in the second half, which Hazard got sniped by the turf monster and fell down, which was rather unfortunate because he was clean through on goal. So yeah, that was unfortunate. Bakayoko needs to work on his shooting, then people will forget about his occasional midfield blunders as well. Yes, it would be nice if we had somebody who could shoot. Theoretically, Barkley is a guy who can shoot, but then he only has like 20 goals in his Premier League career in like 150 games, so that doesn't exactly fill you with confidence. Somebody says that someone tell Ross Barkley not to take corners in the nearest future. Yeah, there was some pretty bad corners from Ross Barkley. Yeah, in the second half there. Maybe we should have had Hazard take our corners. Not sure why Barkley was there, but yeah, not so much. Plenty of practice needed there. Jalapo says, I thought Kennedy showed a good attitude and character on the field when he played last, so why put him on loan? I think that's mostly because he was basically going to head out on loan in the summer already, and the only reason he stayed is because we couldn't sign another left back to back up Alonso. And part of that is also, I think, because Kennedy is not really a left wing back. I mean, he's done all right in some of the easier games. He played pretty well against Norwich in the replay or whatever we want to call it. But I mean, the kid's not a wing back. He's a winger. He's a creative attacking player. Shoehorned in as a wing back because I think was it Mourinho who put him there. But Mourinho played Bertrand Traore as a left wing back once too. So I mean, it's maybe don't have to listen to Mourinho on this one. Kennedy, it sounds like Benitez is willing to at least try him to play in his natural position, which might be helpful. Who knows? I'm no expert. But yeah, I think mainly he's being sent out because he's not really played for like 18 months now. He's not had consistent minutes. He did, he burst onto the scene kind of, and he played a fair amount this first season with Chelsea, and that was the season we don't talk about. And then last season he went to Watford, played like 16 minutes there, and then got hurt and never played again. Came back to Chelsea, played like 2 games, and then this season he's made like 5 appearances. So the kid needs minutes. It's like Musonda, where it'd be cool if he stayed with the team and played a lot, but they're not going to play a lot. It's just how it is. And what benefits them at this point is to go out, get minutes, hopefully impress, or maybe go out for 18 months and impress, and then come back and maybe be the next Moses or Christensen or whoever, depending on your age. So I think that's why Kennedy's heading out, and the fact that he's staying in the Premier League is good. I think theoretically that's what should give you the best chance of leveraging your loan move into a Chelsea spot. Victor Moses, we possibly forget these days. He spent 3 years on various loans in the Premier League, but he was always in the Premier League, so we could kind of gauge his level as to where he was at. Yeah. Ari says, we need to be calm in the Roman Abramovich era. The roller coaster goes on. Success, blip, success. Embarrassing blip. Success, blip again. Are we at the embarrassing blip part? I mean, it's tough to tell. It was our first loss in 13 games, but it was also, I think we have now 7 wins of those 13. So it's a bit of a Gus Hiddink-esque a run of unbeaten games where there's a little too many draws, and that's probably what's making it not feel as good as it should. Especially those nils 3 in a row that can really kind of sap the life and the spirit out of the situation. But it's a long season. I mean, I guess we don't have the privilege of getting tanked by Manchester City in the final for the League Cup. So good luck with that, Arsenal. On the plus side, this takes away 1 game from our schedule, so hooray for that. One less fixture congestion. Do I think we need a new owner? Ooh, Gus Messi. I think our owner is just fine. Don't necessarily think we need new anything. We just everybody's need to settle down a little bit. I mean, it sucks losing to Arsenal. I get it. Let it, yeah. I mean, at least stick out to the end before we make end of the season, before we make any drastic changes. Yeah, I don't think we need a new owner. I think we need we need Roman to stay committed to the club, which he seems to be. Sort out the finances for the new stadium, which they're working on. So I think we're fine there. I think we're fine there. Lack of investment. What are you talking about, Gus Messi? There's plenty of investment. I mean, if you're talking about, say you get a new owner, what Abramovich did in 2003 and 2004 of literally pouring money into the club at rates not really seen before, you can't do that. It's regulations against that. Now you will point to PSG and say regulations don't apply to PSG, and you might be right, but we don't know yet. It's going to be actually pretty interesting with PSG this coming summer and next season, just how hard or how they're going to navigate around all this financial fair play with Neymar, with Mbappe, and all those signings. I think City kind of just got in right before these new regulations came down, but theoretically you can't really do that, and that's actually part of the reason why all the big clubs supported FFP, including Chelsea, who were near the forefront, because it protects the already rich clubs from basically getting Chelsea, like Abramovich came in 2003 and changed the landscape. You can't really do that anymore. His wealth is halved in 5 years. Money going to the club less than any VIX. I mean, yeah, but those investments, despite his massive investments in the beginning, as we talked about, the aim from the very beginning was to be a self-sustainable club. That's why we built an academy. That's why we're building a new stadium. That's why we placed great emphasis on breaking even, of possibly showing a tiny bit of profit or whatever positive revenue. So you say you need a new owner now. Well, when we were talking about this 15 years ago, it sounded pretty good. So ideally that's where we're working towards. Just because Roman isn't pouring every spare change into the club, I don't think makes him a bad owner, but that's just my opinion. Manchester United will dominate under FFP because there's wealth enough to pay 4 players. Indeed. Indeed, and that is actually the biggest valid criticism of FFP, is that it protects the already rich. So if you're already rich and you already have your income streams and your revenue sorted, then you can do what United just did and spend 400 and give Alexis Sanchez 450,000 a week. I mean, I guess they saved a few millions by swapping him for Mkhitaryan, but that's a contract that literally in England 2 teams can afford to give Alexis, and one of them is Manchester United. Not even City. Even City said this is an outrageous amount of money to pay. When City say this is too much, I mean it is what it is. This is new reality. Chelsea are not the top of the financial food chain. We're very close to the top in overall. The overall picture, we're still very close to the top, but not the top of the top. It is what it is. Yeah, new stadium will help. I think we definitely need a new stadium because our match day income is one of the lowest of the top 6. As in fact it was cited, the stadium came under a challenge from a local resident over the past few months, who was unwilling to sign over his light to right deal, or light to right whatever rights. So he was threatening an injunction against the stadium, so the local council had to step in to make sure that doesn't happen. But part of his complaint, part of the family's complaint, was that one way Chelsea could reduce the height of the stadium, which is shading his property and the walkway that's behind the stadium, was to reduce the amount of luxury boxes in the stadium. And they're saying, like a quarter of the stadium is luxury boxes, as if the point being that's it's a pretty pretty transparent attempt at getting more match day income and revenue, which I'm sure won't necessarily fly with all the hardcore crowd, the match day going fan, but the big wealthy fat cats who sit in the luxury boxes, that's where your big money makers are right there. Do you really think extra streets in the ground will be enough? We're already getting a majority of our money from Nike and Yokohama, which won't change for 10 years. Well, those deals are bound to be renegotiated well before the 10 years. I don't think Yokohama's 10 years either. Nike's 10, but as was Adidas, and we renegotiated that like every 3 or 4 years as other deals were being made. So there's break points and stuff like that built into those contracts. That's not a big deal. But yeah, as Ariel says, that's why we hired our new marketing guy. We hired a new CEO, Guy Lawrence. So everything is geared towards improving not only the match day income, but the sponsorship income and all that. You're trying to get close at least to the united stratosphere of having 600 million to play with, and we have like 250 million to play with each year. So it's not gonna be an overnight thing either. That's just not how things work. The stadium won't be ready until like 2024. Sponsorships aren't signed overnight, so it's going to be a constant improvement. That's what makes it fun, though, right? It's boring to be at the very top all the time. How are we handling scouting as of now? That is a good question, and I don't know. Yeah, I'm assuming the guy, I forget the names, the chief scouts underneath Emanalo who were there are still there, so they're probably continuing their jobs as before. As to who they report to, I'm assuming Granovskaya, but your guess is as good as mine. So we hired the CEO, which Chelsea haven't had a CEO since Ron Gourlay left in 2014 now, several years ago now, and before that, of course, it was Peter Kenyon. So now we have a person dedicated to that side of running the club's kind of like day-to-day activities. Whether that means that Granovskaya is actually going to take a more specific player recruitment sporting director role, I'm not so sure. Or I still kind of think we're going to hire somebody to kind of replace Emanalo, to be the chief scout, the coordinator of all that, to be the go-between the manager and the board, and leave Granovskaya in her previous role where she was the chief negotiator person, financial person who takes care of the transfers, and then of course as Abramovich's aide. So she basically is the pseudo proxy for Abramovich. Our priority is clearly getting Courtois and Hazard to sign new contracts rather than getting in new players. Well, that should be our priority for sure. I don't think signing players in January really is good business, regardless of who you're signing. There are exceptions. Obviously, we signed Matic in January, and that turned out to be pretty good the second time around. But it's rare to find a good deal in January. I think we got kind of lucky. It's a special situation with Barkley. yeah, that's the priority beyond signing any new players. Most certainly should be getting Hazard and Courtois to sign new deals. And of course, there are no deals yet signed. They're supposed to sign in January. Now Hazard's been talking kind of like end of the season. Of course, he's mentioned in the season before, and that's fine for him because he still will have 2 years left on his current contract. But Courtois will be in his final year. Real Madrid rumors are back because Real Madrid decided to pass on signing Kepa, whatever his name is, from Athletic Bilbao. PSG rumors are back because why not? Let's link him with PSG as well. So yeah, those are we need to get those signed. Not just for just this season, but it's the spine for the future, right? So Conte talks about whether Conte sticks around for 6 months or 6 years. He talks about building this club for the future, and that involves finishing the transition of the old guard, which Terry was the last of the old guard, and he left this summer. But now we also have several older players, such as Willian or Pedro, Fabregas, guys, Cahill, David Luiz even is 30. It's one of those. Those are the next to rotate out in a transition period, and we need to oversee that. Whether that's Conte who's overseeing that, we'll see. But the other players that are here are the ones that we need to form the spine of the new team around. Players like Conte, Christensen, Courtois, Hazard, obviously, Morata, Azpilicueta, 28-ish now, but presumably Azpilicueta will play until he's 82, so that's fine. Maybe Emerson is somebody who can develop into that. I'm guessing if he's signing Emerson, we're not going to sign Alexandro, and we're hoping that Emerson develops into the next Alexandro instead. But basically, Courtois and Hazard are the new spine, part of the new spine, and thus they need to be signed, and signed quickly. Signing of Emerson means the end of Alexandro, right? Yes, I think so. What is the situation with backup left wing backs? Is Bava going to? Yeah, in fact, I just saw a tweet scroll by that Bava is apparently on his way to Schalke to complete his medical or whatever. So that's, he's heading out. Did you hear the report about Neymar's private conversation? Someone leaked that he regrets going to the French league because they're too defensive-minded and not free-flowing like the Spanish league. Aw, the poor baby. He's laying the seeds to a move to Real Madrid. That would be pretty hilarious. Yeah. I think I have heard that Neymar's long game is to end up at Real Madrid, but he didn't want to do a straight transfer like Figo back in the day. Who knows? It still seems like a weird thing for basically the third best player in the world to choose such a non-challenging and such an overtly financially motivated transfer or move as when he moved to PSG. He talked about building a new legacy, all this nonsense. Yeah, I would not be surprised if Neymar ends up at Real Madrid, which would be pretty hilarious. If Neymar chooses to come to the EPL. I mean, if he's complaining about the French league being too defensive, good luck to him in England. I'd like to see Neymar take on, Shane Duffy of Brighton, a guy who's the man mountain. Get Ryan Shawcross out there on Neymar. That would be fun. Yeah, I don't think there's any danger of Neymar coming to England. He's he's probably gonna go back to Spain because it's, nice weather and nice defenders. All right. I think we veered on to Neymar. I think that's a good it's a good time to call this done. We touched on the game earlier. In case you missed it, in case you're still angry about it, Chelsea lost to Arsenal 2-1. Arsenal are in the League Cup final, where they'll have the privilege of being destroyed by Manchester City. So yeah, Chelsea next will play Newcastle in the other cup, the FA Cup. This will be on Sunday, 1:30 p.m. kickoff local time. Old Rafa Benitez is back for the second time in a couple months. We beat Newcastle at the start of December at home in the league. Presumably, we should not have much problems with them, but it's another game that we have to play. I'm guessing we'll see a fair amount of rotation, just because we've played 2 straight games with the first, presumably first choice lineup. So should be fun. Early kickoff on Sunday, kind of post lunch. It should be fun. Get a nice win, get this angst out of our system, and then look forward to the close of the transfer window, which looks like we are signing Emerson, who's a left wing back from Roma. We might be signing Edin Dzeko, which still doesn't make too much sense to me, but if it's possibly something that Conte wants. Maybe he doesn't want. Who knows? Conte says he has no impact on transfers. Maybe he doesn't want Dzeko at all. Who knows? But our 2 main needs for January were backup left back and backup striker. And if we get those 2, then actually we can say that we've had a successful transfer window. Hey! There's something to be happy about. Hooray! A good transfer window. Meanwhile, City and United are spending, hundreds of millions again. But this is our new reality. We can still finish 2nd or 3rd in the league, which you don't get a trophy for, but it is very important. We're out of the League Cup. We're still in the FA Cup. We're still in Champions League for now. So there's plenty to look forward to. It's easy to be negative, but it's much more fun to be positive, I think. Yeah. So on that note, thanks for watching at whatever hour it may have been for you. We'll be back after the Newcastle game at a more reasonable hour. Thanks for the comments. Be sure to visit the website, weain'tgotnohistory.com, for more amazing positive content and lots of negative comments. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching.